Questions for reflection. In our first reading, taken from the last chapter of the second letter, which the Apostle Peter wrote to all the early churches, he's addressing some of the problems which had already crept into the early churches, as false teaching began to spread concerning the second coming, the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. The first among the apostles, the first pope, reaffirms that Jesus will indeed return as he promised. But he also speaks to the necessity of all the followers of Jesus living holy lives and winning others to a relationship with Jesus Christ and inclusion in the church through baptism. Sadly, these false teachers who either deny the second coming or confuse the faithful about how they should live while awaiting the return of the Lord have never really left the church. They reappear over and over again. This sage and inspired advice from Peter is as important today as it has ever been. While we eagerly await the return of the Lord and the establishment of his kingdom, we are called to live our lives in him and to grow in holiness. How are we doing? In our responsorial psalm, David's words give us a reminder that 1,000 years are like yesterday. In another psalm, he proclaims that a day in the Lord is as 1,000 years. Time is temporal. It's a creature. God is eternal. We are invited by the Lord to live every day being filled with his faithful love and singing and praising his holy name with joy. In the gospel appointed for today's Holy Mass, some Pharisees and Herodians try to trick Jesus in an effort to bring an accusation against him. They asked whether it was lawful to pay the tribute or tax to Caesar or not. Either way he answered, or so they thought, they would have an opportunity to cause problems. After all, the Romans had occupied their lands. If he said no, they would accuse him of being an insurrectionist. If he said yes, they would seek to undermine his claims to actually following the law of Moses. Yet Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God, is not fooled. He turns the tables, using this effort to undermine him to convey a very important lesson to those who would follow him. The state should never elevate itself to the position of God in the church. His followers should be very good citizens, but loyal first to God. This challenge of being faithful, faith-filled citizens continues to this day. All Christians owe their first allegiance to the Lord, but we are also called to live our lives with a moral coherence as good citizens. There's an ancient Christian manuscript entitled The Letter to Diogenetus, which most historians date back to somewhere between 65 and 125 AD. It contained an insight concerning the relationship of Christians to the world, which, though seemingly simple, is the key to understanding the heart of the matter. The letter was an apology, which means a defense of the early Christian faith and lifestyle. It was addressed to an anonymous pagan inquirer into the Christian faith and written by an unknown author. Its importance is underscored by the fact that it was one of the documents favored by the fathers of the Second Vatican Council and quoted quite often. They use it as the foundational basis of their teaching on social involvement in the documents which address the role of the Church in the modern world. It is cited in the Catechism of the Catholic Church in its excellent treatment of the duties of citizenship, and that's in 2234 to 2246 of the Catechism. And it's regularly referred to in social encyclicals and explanatory sources. I offer you one line from the letter, and I encourage you to find it and read it. And here's a quote. In a word, what the soul is in a body, the Christians are in the world. Christians are still called to be the soul of the world in our age. How are we doing?